Hello everyone, welcome to the day 3 of first week of this course. So in the last class we learnt about symmetry elements and symmetry operations. So we learnt about the definition of symmetry operations as well as symmetry elements. So we know that any given movement of a body that brings the body back to an indistinguishable structure, that is called symmetry operations, and these symmetry operations are taking place about some point or about an axis or a plane which may or may not be included in a body, and these points or planes or axes, they are known as symmetry elements. And if you look at on the screen, so you can see we have outlined all the symmetry elements that are possible for any given object. So we have 5 different symmetry elements: identity element and proper axis of rotation, then mirror planes and center of symmetry or the inversion symmetry, and lastly the improper axis of rotation. And in the last class we learnt about identity, which is do nothing operation, and also we learnt about the proper axis of rotation. So we showed you some examples of proper axis of rotation there. Today I will just show you one with the help of one model that will make things a lot clear for you. Okay, so you can see the model that I am holding, you can think it like a model for chloroform, CHCl3. So this white one corresponds to CCl bond, and the red ones, each one corresponds to CH bonds. CHCl3 I said. So this white one will be CH bond and the red ones will be CCl bonds. Now you can imagine an axis which passes through this CH bond, and about that if I give a rotation, so this particular CCl bond is toward you now. Now I give an 120-degree rotation, so now you have another configuration. So you can see that these two are indistinguishable. Okay, and this axis is C3. If I operate once more, then I end up having another indistinguishable structure of CHCl3. So this axis is known as C3 axis. Okay, and this is a proper axis of rotation, and C3 it gives you back the indistinguishable structure of the original molecule. Now we looked at also another example of benzene and I think ammonia also. So I will request you to try to form some model. If you can buy from market, any bookshop will have these models, ball and stick model, or you can make some models by yourselves, which is not so difficult, and try out finding out different symmetry elements, because that will really help you in understanding okay how you can find out the symmetry elements. Because when you look at any molecular structure on pen and paper, at the beginning it may not be so apparent. For certain molecules it will be very easy, but for some molecular structures it will be a little difficult without having a particular model. So let's move on to the next symmetry element, which is the mirror plane. So plane of symmetry is defined as follows. Like if I have a plane within the body, not outside the body. Okay, suppose I have a molecule. Say for example, I have a molecule, the same molecule that I showed earlier, that is CHCl3. Okay, and if I can imagine a plane through this body about which I can have reflection of any given point on any side of that plane. Suppose the coordinate of that particular point is x, y, z, then after reflection through this particular plane, I will get an indistinguishable structure on the other side, indistinguishable point. So the plane will be such that for any such point on this body, we'll find an equivalent point on the other side of the plane. Then I will call that particular plane within the body of the molecule as a plane of symmetry or a reflection plane. Okay. So let's have a look at this particular molecule again. Okay. So can you tell, is there any plane which can be called a plane of symmetry? The answer is obviously yes. So if you imagine a plane through one H, C and a Cl, this plane, okay, so this is the plane. This will cut this structure into two halves, okay. So one half contains this part, another half contains this part, correct, and one is the mirror image of the other, exactly. So if I choose a point here, the reflection through this point will find another point which is exactly equivalent to the first point. So this acts as a mirror plane. Now you can see, since I am talking about this particular structures, there is not only one plane, okay, there are multiple planes. Since I chose one HC Cl plane, but I can actually choose any other CHC Cl plane, and the third one is this one. Okay, so I can have three planes of symmetries, and this plane of symmetry is denoted as sigma. Okay, so sigma is the symbol of plane of symmetry. Now very often you will come across with different types of sigmas. Okay, for example, like sigma H, sigma V and sigma D. These three are mainly used, and many occasions you will also find like sigma V prime, sigma V double prime, or sigma D double prime, sigma D triple prime, so on. Now these all, like sigma H or sigma D or sigma V, or even with the primes, they are all sigma planes. There is nothing special about it, but this subscripts H, D and V, they are used to distinguish certain type of mirror plane, but their functions are exactly the same, just to reflect certain points from one side of the molecule to another to give an indistinguishable structure. So what is sigma V? First place. Okay, so sigma V, like you can see the definition of sigma V on the on your screen. So sigma, if I can mark this, so sigma V is here. So sigma V is the mirror plane which contains the principal axis of symmetry. We have learned about principal axis of symmetry. Say for example here this CH bond, and if I have an axis through this CH bond, that is my principal axis of symmetry, in this particular case C3. So if there is any sigma plane containing this axis, I will call it as a sigma V. So all those planes that I showed you just few minutes back, they are all sigma V's. So this plane is a sigma V plane, this plane is another sigma V plane, and this plane is also another sigma V plane. Okay. Now let's have a look at what is sigma H. So sigma H is the sigma plane which is perpendicular to the principal axis of rotation. So suppose I would have a sigma plane which is perpendicular to this axis, that is lying in this plane, okay, that would be a sigma H plane. But you can see here, is there any sigma H plane? Answer is no, because this is my principal axis of symmetry, and if I have a perpendicular plane perpendicular to this principal axis of symmetry, then I really do not have any equivalent structure or indistinguishable structure when I reflect any point from this side onto this plane, right? Because I will not find a counterpart for this point on the other side. so is this one or this one. So there is no such sigma H plane in this particular molecule, but you can actually have sigma H plane if you consider certain other molecules. Say for example this, all of you know what this model stands for, right? This is a benzene molecule, so all 6 carbons and 6 hydrogens, right? So now I can easily figure out what will be the principal axis of symmetry, right? So if I have an axis just passing through the middle of this benzene ring and I can rotate it by 60 degree, I get another indistinguishable structure. We dealt with this in last week. Now if that is the principal axis of symmetry, do I have a sigma H plane? Look at it carefully. This is a planar molecule, right? So I will just reorient it toward you. Now say this is my axis, this is C6, perpendicular to this will be just the benzene plane. Now you can easily imagine a plane through this benzene ring containing the carbons and hydrogens. So if you reflect any object here, it will find an indistinguishable structure after the reflection, because the plane will cut all these atoms into exact halves, right? So therefore any point on this side will have an counterpart on the other side. So I will have a sigma plane really in this plane, and this sigma plane which is perpendicular to the C6 axis, the principal axis of rotation, this is a sigma H plane. Okay. Now what about sigma D? That is the other type of plane of symmetry. So sigma D is also a plane which contains the principal axis of symmetry, but it is different from sigma V in a slight in a subtle way. What is that? Let us have a look at it. So now we have already figured out what will be the principal axis of symmetry here, this thing, and then if I have a plane, you can imagine we have already figured out sigma H, so forget about it. Now let us find out sigma V in this case. So if I have in this direction a plane, then I have this particular hydrogen, a counterpart here. Similarly this one has a counterpart here, this one has a counterpart here. Okay, sorry, this one will be cut into halves, this one and this one. So I have a sigma plane. Similarly plane passing through this hydrogen, carbon, this carbon and this hydrogen will also form a plane, and this is another plane. Okay. Now I can have another plane, another type of plane which will actually cut the angle that is formed, rather dihedral angle to be precise, which is formed by taking the principal axis of symmetry, that is this particular axis, and this carbon and this carbon, which contains those sigma V's. So I have an angle like this and this, and the dihedral angle. So if I have a plane which dissects this dihedral angle, and that plane, if it acts as a symmetry plane, then I will call that particular sigma plane as a sigma D. Okay, is that clear? So you can see the actual definition clearly written on your screen. Okay, all right. So now let us take another example through which you can clearly see what is sigma D, sigma V and sigma H. So PtCl4, okay, tetrachloroplatinum. If I ignore the charges, okay, then I have a just square planar complex. So platinum and 4 chlorines are at 4 corners of a square, if I can imagine, right? All of you know the structure. So here if you have a look at on your screen, you can see there can be a mirror plane which contains all the chlorine atoms and the platinum atom, meaning that molecular plane itself can act as a symmetry plane, because the molecular plane will cut all the atoms into half. So you can get a symmetry plane, and that will be a sigma H. Why? because this is a square planar complex, and you can imagine rotational symmetry axis perpendicular to this plane passing through the platinum atom, right? And you can give a 90-degree rotation, you can get an indistinguishable structure. So that means you have an C4 axis, right? And that is the highest order rotation axis that you can find for this particular molecule, because the other ones are C2. That also you can easily figure out, because you have learned how to find these C2s also using that BF3 example that we gave in the last class. Now we have found the C4 axis there, that is the principal axis of symmetry, and the molecular plane, which can act as a sigma plane also, is perpendicular to this C4. So therefore we will designate that particular plane, which is also guided by this square kind of structure. So this is our sigma h, right? On the other hand, if you follow this red lines, okay, which are also sigma planes, because you can produce indistinguishable structure through reflection, by reflection through these planes. These two contain the principal axis of symmetry. So this is a sigma v plane. Now you can have two other type of planes also, which is shown here using the blue colors, right? So this two contains the principal axis of symmetry, that is C4, and also it bisects the dihedral angle. Okay, so these dihedral angles are formed essentially by two sigma v's, right? Two adjacent sigma v's, they form this dihedral angle, and it bisects that. And as a matter of fact, this dihedral angle is also formed by the intersection of two C2 axes. Okay, so the two C2 axes, they intersect, and you take the principal axis of symmetry, you form the same dihedral angle. Okay, so this is the dihedral angle, and if you can imagine, say this is C4. Okay, then this dihedral angle is the one that we are talking about, and this sigma plane shown in blue color, they bisect this plane. Similar is happening in this particular case also, right? So these two are sigma t planes. Okay, so I hope by now you know exactly what are sigma planes and what are their functions, and what are the different types of sigma planes, and how to know which one is what. Now so far we have learnt identity, we have learnt rotations, and we just now have learnt the reflection. Okay, these are symmetry operations. So we learnt identity elements, we learnt about the rotational axis and sigma plane or mirror planes. Now you can combine this operations, which I will talk about maybe 2 to 3 classes later. Now on your screen, if you look at, I have tried to show you the rotation and reflection symmetries for a single molecule. Okay, because our aim is to classify molecules in terms of their symmetries. We have been talking about, okay, this structure is more symmetric than this structure, but how? So we found out that there are certain things like symmetry elements and symmetry operations by which you can somehow quantify. So depending on how many symmetry operations are there, how many symmetry elements are there, and how many symmetry operations can be generated using those symmetry elements, that will decide which molecule is having higher symmetry than another molecule. Okay, so we should be able to find out all the symmetry elements that are present in a given molecule. So now if you have a look at on your screen, you will see we have given an example of water molecule, and you should be able to easily find out the rotation axis, which is C2, right? Because we can have 180-degree rotation by an axis passing through oxygen, and which can which is on the plane of HOH bond, HOH molecule. Okay, So that one is the C2 axis. Now in the same structure, I have tried to show two different planes. Okay, so this is one which is in somewhat like pink color, and another is in a gray color. So these two planes, if you can imagine, and it's very easy to see here, right, because this is one of the simplest structures that you can have. So these two planes, each one of them will produce indistinguishable structure of this molecule water when we operate the this reflection. Now you can see here that I have given sigma v and sigma v prime notations to these two planes. I mentioned that you may come across this kind of symbolism, that is not only that sigma v, sigma d, sigma h, but also sigma d, sigma prime, sigma d prime, or here like sigma v prime. This is just to differentiate, because if I call both of them sigma v, then when you want to do something further mathematically or rather quantitatively, you will end up in trouble, because if you are not distinguishing two different CVs, sigma v's, right, and two different sigma v's will have different functions. Like here you look at this structure again, the sigma v will cut this molecule into two halves, where each half will have one some portion of this oxygen, half portion of the oxygen, and one H. Similarly, the other half will have the same thing, but the sigma v prime plane, that cuts the molecule into half in such a way that each half gets half of each atoms, right. So those two are different, right. So later on we will see that those two will have certain different characters. Okay, we will know about this term, particularly the character, in a later stage. So in order to distinguish them, we have given two different symbols, sigma v and sigma v prime. Now on the same screen you can see that I am putting this C2 and sigma v there, and you can see how the operation will transform the molecule. So in the first case, in this top part, if you look at, you will see there is a star marked hydrogen atom which moves from here to here, right. So if you look at this molecule, it has gone here. So C2 will move this molecule, this hydrogen atom over here. Now if you have a sigma v acting there, okay, sigma v essentially which will cut this HOH angle into halves, then this star will now be reflected here. Okay, so here for some reason the star is not being shown up, so the star will be somewhere here, correct. So now you can see that this sigma v and C2, they produce the same result. Okay, that's pretty amazing thing, and in many cases you will see that some symmetry operations will produce the same structure after operating them on the molecule. And also I'll mention here that you will see the successive operations, okay, successive applications of the symmetry operations, say 2 or more than 2, can produce a structure which one can actually get by applying one single symmetry operations. All those things will come from the combination of symmetry operations that we will see probably the following week. Okay, but I just wanted to mention that so that you are aware of that fact. Okay, so here on the screen you have this benzene ring where this difference between sigma v, sigma h, and sigma d, they are shown, and I have already showed you using this model, if you remember exactly. Okay, so that's all I wanted to talk about regarding plane of symmetry. Now let's move to the next symmetry elements that we need to know, need to learn, that is center of symmetry, or is also called inversion center, that is written on the screen. So how do we define center of inversion? For any given structure or molecular structure, if you can produce an equivalent point by taking a point on the object and passing through a particular point and getting the equivalent point on the other side. Okay. So then that origin will be known as a center of inversion. So let me try to explain this in a little bit better way. So suppose I have say let me try to use a board here. So suppose this is my space, okay, which characterizes any particular molecule. Now I take any particular point, okay, and the coordinate of that point is this, that is x, y, and z. Now if I take this point whose coordinate is x, y, z and can find an equivalent point here whose coordinate will be minus x, minus z, y, and minus z, then the origin of this system will be the point of inversion or center of inversion. Okay. So this particular point here will be the center of inversion I. Okay. So we'll explain what this center of inversion is using and the model, and I'll also I have prepared some presentation regarding that one. So let's take this particular molecule on your screen, which resembles an octahedral molecule like SF6. Okay. So we will use this particular molecule to explain the center of inversion in the next class. Okay. So we will stop here today, and we'll come back in the day 4 of this course with this inversion center and many more things. Thank you very much.